Thomas Partey and Houssem Aouar have been dominating the Arsenal socials for what feels like the entire time I've been a fan of the club. But what I've not kind of yet done is a direct comparison between both players. Taking into account past analysis, taking into account some things we'll look at on the fly, and look at maybe how they've done also so far this season at their respective clubs. There are mere days away until this transfer window closes. And so I think it's an important time as we get down to what I've called now the 11th hour to really look at these players in detail and kind of decide as a fan base who Arsenal should really be prioritising this 2020 summer/autumn transfer window. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Tactical Breakdown series, the show in which we look at the players analytically that are linked to the club, look at them statistically, and of course with the help of some expert insight. So you guys don't just have to hear the ramblings of a man who likes to think he's in the know about things, but you also get the expert insight from the guys that really genuinely do. And then we talk to you guys in the chat box about what your thoughts are as well. And of course, if you're watching on playback, please leave your comments below as to what you guys think about today's video. If you could subscribe to the channel as well and like the video if you've enjoyed it, and check out some of our other content as well. But let's go straight into things. And the way we're going to do this is I've drawn up some previous footage from our other tactical breakdowns that we did separately on Aouar and Partey. So we're going to watch those back and we're going to look at what John Driscoll and Jeremy Smith, both respective experts in the field of Spanish and French football respectively, and see what they've got to say, and then go into some of the graphics and the statistics around both players, and then we'll come to a final judgment. If you've been following me on Twitter, which you can up there, you would have seen today that I think my kind of view on things is fairly clear-cut about who I think we should prioritise. But I'm going to save my kind of opinion to the end of it, and then get your thoughts as well. So we're going to start with the Thomas Partey side of things, and that means kicking off with our good friend John Driscoll. John Driscoll is a sports commentator of lots of types of football, but he in particular loves his Spanish side of things, and he runs the La Liga weekly podcast with former Spurs player Terry Gibson, as they talk about lots of Spanish football, and week in, week out cover all of it. So if you haven't checked out the La Liga Weekly podcast, which is now independent and used to be part of Sky, then please make sure you do. I'll make sure I leave a link in the description to John's Twitter and then, of course, to La Liga Weekly. So check it out. But let's sit back, relax, and enjoy once again John's thoughts on the Ghanaian international.
So I've done one of these on Thomas Partey before when the club was last linked with signing him, and I said that they should move heaven and earth to get him, and I maintain that view now. He is a tremendous midfield player, one of the best in La Liga. He's available now. He shouldn't be. Atleti should give him a new contract and they should try to keep him. So therefore, this would be the moment for an English club to steal in and grab him. The Spanish clubs at the moment are very reluctant to spend any money because of the situation with fans. The English clubs, I think, have got deeper pockets, deeper reserves, bigger TV slice of their money. Bigger slice of their money comes from TV than it does for the Spanish clubs. And so the English clubs are in a strong strategic position at the moment to sign players, such as Thomas Partey. So what kind of midfielder is he? He is a central midfield player. I've seen him play wide when Simeone has basically employed central midfielders in wide positions, which he does because that's the kind of coach he is. I've seen him, Thomas Partey, fill in as a right back as well. All of that would be a waste. It would be a waste if he was just a holding midfield player, because he can run with the ball superbly, surge through midfield, surge past play. Not the most skillful of players, so it is done with speed and with strength when he does that. He's an aggressive forward passer of the ball, and he reads the game well enough to be a terrific winner back of the ball. Not necessarily in La Liga terms. You don't see many big crunching tackles in La Liga. You don't see that many in the Premier League anymore. So that would be a little adaptation he would have to make. But he could do that because, as well as all those midfield qualities that he's got, he is also fast and strong, which is, I think, what you need to make that transition from La Liga to the Premier League. Because obviously the idea of the La Liga midfielder is this sort of technical player looking for little angle passes and all of that. Partey can do that, but he can also do what we would consider to be the more traditional English style of the game, which is moving around the pitch at speed, being not afraid of your physicality, winning headers, that sort of thing. He is a proper all-round midfield player. The money, yeah, it's expensive. But then top quality midfield players don't come along that often. He's 27, so you get the best of his years, really, if you sign him now. And so, you know, I would be, if I was Arsenal, I'd be looking at finding many, many ways to pay the money that Atleti want. And if you can possibly negotiate it down a little bit, maybe. I don't think Atleti are in the market for letting him go on the cheap. They're not trying to force him out, I don't think. They're just willing to not renew his contract, take that amount of money, and if I was Arsenal, I would do my best to get him.
So there's John's thoughts. Again, please check out John on Twitter at Driscoll FC. You can find his stuff over at La Liga Weekly as well. It reinforces everything we've kind of talked about. Full kind of breakdown on Thomas Partey. Make sure you go onto the channel and do so. I also did an interview with Graham Hunter a couple of months back now, talking about Thomas Partey in lots of detail, which I know a lot of you enjoyed. But if you haven't yet checked that out, please make sure you do. Graham Hunter goes into loads of detail around the Ghanaian. But kind of looking at what Partey's main asset is as a player. And I've seen a couple of you in the chat box talking about this as well, and talking about what he actually brings to the team. And for me, the biggest one is the way that he drives the ball out from the back. I don't really see too many other players with this ability in the consistency that is presented in the way that Thomas Partey does. The way he picks up the ball and drives it forward and gets into positions where 1 minute there's players surrounding him and the next minute there's not, because he's just gone through them. He's just gone and taken the ball around them and pushed the ball up the pitch into much more attacking positions, as you can see here. In this same scenario, he starts back, if you go back to the first clip here, right at the back, taking the ball out from the fence, and he ends up in nearly the final third. And this is when I struggle to get behind the argument of people telling me that he's not creative, because I don't understand how someone who can take the ball from your own third of the pitch into the final third of the opposition's and then pass the ball to a more creative player than himself isn't in itself a creative thing to do. Without Thomas Partey, Arsenal are limited to the wide areas in terms of their creation. It's why we struggled so much without Tierney against West Ham, because Tierney is so important to how we create down the left flank with the balls in behind and the way he pushes forward. On the right-hand side, Bellerin does that less so, but he's certainly one that busts a gut to get forward to support that right wing, that right winger and the right mid playing in the 3-4-3 formation. And you look at sort of what Bellerin does, and he drives the opposition defence, which is kind of the opposite to what Tierney does, because he's more about passing. But centrally, Xhaka and Ceballos enable those flanks. Very rarely do you find Ceballos specifically being more central. And actually you find Xhaka now and again will play a centralised pass. But neither, whilst even Ceballos likes to carry the ball, he doesn't carry the ball over long distances. He carries the ball around a couple of players and then lays it off or plays it wide. Thomas Partey would enable us to not only go to a back four, which is also another key aspect, like giving us that defensive cover, but he also enables us to connect the back line to the midfield and to the front line. And if that's not creativity, I don't know what is. Let's look at another example here against Levante. In his own box this time, takes the ball out to the left-hand side, which is weaker side, takes it up the pitch, takes on players, and he knows when to pass it. He's an intelligent player. He has the knowledge of the game to know what to do in different positions. If we then have a look at sort of the statistics of good old Thomas Partey, I'll zoom in a little bit here so you can see it better. But defensively is a massive part of Thomas Partey's game. Winning 63.1% of the 7.48 defensive duels is an insanely successful rate of tackling. If you look at the way he gets involved with different challenges, and he loves getting in for a bit of a physical battle, but he comes out with a 63.1% success rate in those. And if you have a look back at the tactical breakdowns that we've done of lots of players, nothing comes close. Other players' defensive duel percentage wins doesn't come close to Thomas Partey's from what we've looked at. And not only on top of that, but he's winning 66.4% of his aerial duels. He's winning nearly 50% of his loose ball duels. He's winning 40% of any sliding tackles, which aren't that often, one every other game he's making. 5 interceptions. And he recovers the ball 10 times. And there's not many centre midfielders that we see around at the moment that are losing the ball less than they're recovering it especially someone like Partey that loves to go on a dribbling run. If we have a look at the number of dribbles that he makes per game, 2.39 on average is what he's making in games, which is, for a player of his ilk and the position that he usually plays quite deep, is just so niche in that position. And it's something that you won't get from so many others. 2.239 seems low. I get that to have in every game. But across a whole season, when you've then gone across that and you've done 76 dribbles that have gone into the opposition half, and it's 2.39, so you're actually looking at over 100 per season, is an insane amount. It is a ridiculous amount of dribbles throughout the season. So I would be easily looking at Thomas Partey as someone that transforms our midfield. Now, it's important that we go and look into the other side of this as well, which is, of course, looking at Houssem Aouar. And to do that, what we need to do is, first of all, have a chat with our good friend Jeremy Smith, Jeremy Smith 98 on Twitter. You know Jeremy. He comes on and he talks about French footballers all the time and Liga footballers all the time. And it was no different with Houssem Aouar. Now, what we must say is what we said the last time we spoke with Jeremy about this, is that Jeremy's lighting in this video is a little bit suggestive. But I want you to look past that. I want you to look through the haze and just listen and sit back and relax to what Jeremy has got to say around the mercurial Houssem Aouar.
Fun fact, on the exact day that Michael Owen was scoring his wonder goal and David Beckham was getting sent off for his little temper tantrum against Argentina in the 98 World Cup in Saint-Etienne, just up the road, Houssem Aouar was being born. He stayed in Lyon basically the whole time since then, and over the last 3 years or so, he's probably become Lyon's star player, arguably with Depay at the moment, but certainly sort of following on the natural progression of homegrown talent from Lacazette to Nabil Fekir. Aouar is the next one who's likely to leave the club, probably this summer, especially if Lyon don't qualify for Europe and they have to win the Champions League to do that, although after tonight's result against Man City, they're not so far away. And tonight maybe is a sort of match that certainly shows the best of Aouar. At his best, he is a sort of galaxy chocolate bar of a footballer. He's so smooth. He's not someone who's going to dribble past five players, even though he probably has the skills to do that. He's got fantastic technical ability, a brilliant sense of space, able to kind of drop between the lines, really good long and short pass on him. Not a bad finish, and even a decent tackler on his day. He can do a little bit of everything, and the real frustration possibly over the last 3 years is just the lack of consistency and proactivity. You don't necessarily get great matches from him week in, week out, and also when Lyon struggle, which they often do, he sort of goes down to everyone else's level rather than sort of raising everyone up to his level. But there's no doubt about his ability, and the fact that he generally shows it against the very top teams is sort of, I guess, a good sign, maybe also a bad sign in a way, because it suggests he could pick and choose his matches. And certainly his fantastic performance against Man City tonight just follows on from his great performances against them in the Champions League last year. So clearly a brilliant player there, and whoever signs him and manages to get some consistency out of him onto a fantastic thing. And I think with the fact that Liverpool have been linked before, Barcelona, Man City, obviously Guardiola's often spoken highly of him, and certainly after tonight you've got to think that they're going to make a play for him. Arsenal have got a lot of competition, but I certainly think that if Arsenal were to get him in Arteta, they've possibly got the perfect coach to get something out of him, because I don't think it's a sort of wild step to kind of say that they're sort of similar players. I think Arteta also was a sort of really silky player who, like Aouar at his best, not only would make his teams tick, he'd make them purr. I think he also had a little bit of a side to him like Aouar. Although he looks a little lightweight, or they both look a bit lightweight, they both know how to look after themselves and can even play a defensive midfield role if necessary. So certainly the likeness between the two players suggests that if anyone can get the best out of Aouar, Arteta might be that man. So I think Arsenal have got tough competition. There's no way Olas is going to let him go cheaply. But if Arsenal get him, then I genuinely think they've got someone who could become one of the best midfielders in the world over the next couple of years.
So there's Jeremy's thoughts, speaking immediately after Lyon knocked out Manchester City from the Champions League a few weeks back. And there's a few things you pick up from that are key points. One is obviously that you can't ignore the guy's potential. You can't ignore what Houssem Aouar could turn into as a player. And that is definitely something that shouldn't be shied away from. And if Arsenal can get a deal done for this guy, it would be huge, in my opinion, for the club. Before we go into anything else about Aouar as sort of the potential of the player, let's have a look at some of the things that he does and what Jeremy was talking about. One of the key things is that Aouar creates space for himself. This is in the Manchester City game that Jeremy was talking afterwards. And one of the key things about Aouar is that he creates space, he finds space against teams which you wouldn't necessarily think to find space in, and he does that really, really well. You can see it here, just this seeing it so clearly. Finding the spaces and finding the passes inside are going to be key to his game. Is he going to get that space playing in an Arsenal system? It's not something that I could categorically comment on. But time and time again, he finds himself in these spaces. Even in here, when you've got Dembele playing in the ball, he's moved into a position between 5 players that gives him that space still. And he does that excellently. And when he does get into the final third, he is capable of playing in some fantastic balls into his teammates. And he is certainly someone that is a creative player. That is no doubt about it. He can certainly create goals. Let's have a look at some of his statistics. Statistically, you're looking at him defensively. I kind of wanted to pick out the defensive side of his game first. To sort of talk about what Jeremy said, that he can play in other positions. He wins 52.9% of the nearly 5 defensive duels he gets involved, which is not bad when you consider that Thomas Partey is doing 10% higher rate compared to what we would consider more of a forward-thinking player. That is still pretty impressive. Successful in terms of loose ball duels, he's only 30% of the time winning it. Aerial duels is not part of his game, but he does get involved with them and win 40%. 2 interceptions in the midfield, so less than half the amount that Thomas Partey is returning on average. But it's this sort of this area with the losses recoveries where you know that you've got your sort of your creative player on your hands, losing the ball nearly 11 times compared to just under 3.5 recoveries per game is what Aouar is about, really. He is a riskier player. He is someone that's going to try and create things in the final third a lot more than a Partey. If we have a look at the dribbles, he's dribbling on the ball nearly 7 times during each game. He does carry it forwards. And you would have to think if Aouar came in, you would be looking at maybe Dani Ceballos to be someone that is sort of superseded. You can't imagine that Arsenal would sign a Houssem Aouar and see Ceballos signed permanently from Real Madrid unless there was some other kind of formation or some other kind of position that Arteta would look for either of those players. Aouar has played left mid for Lyon as well, and maybe that's something they'd look at in the future, playing a different formation maybe, but I don't think that's where they would necessarily see him in the future. I think that would be a little bit too far out of there. In terms of obviously goals and assists last season, what he managed to total was 9 goals and 5 assists, which is not too bad. Crosses aren't too much part of his game, but it's the dribbling and the offensive duels. He's winning nearly 50% of his offensive duels, which is very nice. If we have a look at his passing as well, 85% passing accuracy. He's a creative player. If we look at the pass into the final third, 78.4% accuracy of passing into the final third is really, really good. And passes into the penalty area is nearly 60%. Is also really, really good. He's a forward-thinking player. He's got more forward than backward passes, and you would expect that. And Jeremy talked about that. He's a forward-thinking player too. So there is a lot to talk about in regards to Aouar and Partey. But then it kind of boils down to the bit where chat box, I want to get you more involved with this, is that we need to think about the fact that Arsenal realistically are probably, if we are hopeful, able to sign one of these 2 players. And you have to kind of think about which one is going to have the greatest impact on this Arsenal side this season. Who's going to do the most damage to opposition teams? Who's going to make Arsenal going from a possible top 4 contender to a definite top 4 contender? Now, I'll give you my thoughts on this after now giving you sort of the unbiased look at both players. And in my opinion, I can't really look past Thomas Partey to anyone else as being a player that would change things for me, because not only is he already 27, and that means we'll be, as John said, getting the best years of Thomas Partey's career, we'd also be getting someone that plays a position that Arsenal have struggled to sign players in for so long. And we've relied on sort of smaller technical players to play the role that a Patrick Vieira Never really we never really replaced that, and I don't want to get too bogged down in that because we kind of switched when Patrick Vieira moved on. Arsene Wenger decided to go with sort of a Cesc Fabregas, and after that we continued on that mold. We were getting Alexander Hlebs and Nasris and Santi Cazorlas and these sort of smaller technical players that could play in the centre of the park, and eventually Arsenal began to decline and had been declining, and we failed to compete against the bigger sides in big matches, and we failed to compete sometimes physically against the smaller teams. Even when we signed Lucas Torreira, at first things looked great, and I get that there is an element of being misused by Unai Emery for sure, but the fact that Torreira was kind of this little terrier in the midfield only kind of lasted for so long, and it still felt that Arsenal really lacked that competitive edge from a physical player like a Partey would provide. Now, I think it's very, very unfair to look at Thomas Partey as just a physical player, because that isn't just what Thomas Partey is. It's very, very far from the truth. The thing about Thomas Partey is that he is intelligent on the ball. He knows exactly what he wants to do, and then he delivers it. He plays the right passes at the right times in the right areas. He knows when to make a tackle. He knows when to get involved with play. He knows his position. He knows where he needs to be. And so that side of his game is very, very strong too. If we look at the counter argument to that, Houssem Aouar presents the opportunity for Arsenal to have a player in a creative part of the pitch that we've struggled with previously. Aouar does create for Arsenal centrally. If you look at his game in the Coupe de la Ligue final against PSG, the passes that he made in that game were very central, very creative. And if you look at the passes that currently we have from El Neni and Xhaka, especially in the Fulham game, most of the passes that they're playing are going out to wide positions to try and enable our wide players or enable our wing backs. And whilst that works to a degree, whilst you're playing with a back three, you get very one-dimensional. You get very, very one-dimensional in how you want to play using wing areas, and you don't necessarily get that same creativity through the middle. And Aouar would certainly bring that. However, what I would argue is that I think Thomas Partey would bring that as well. Now, that's not me trying to claim that Thomas Partey should be known as a creative player. Far from it. But what I am trying to say is that Thomas Partey drives the ball so well up the pitch and into so many dangerous positions that he lays the ball off for players to be creative. Thomas Partey would enable Arsenal, in my opinion, to switch to a back four, which means that you would have an extra man in midfield in front of Thomas Partey. Be that in a dream world, Houssem Aouar, or be that a Willian or a Ceballos or a Smith Rowe in the future. You look at someone who could play in front of Partey, and Partey could bring the ball to them. And in my opinion, that is creative in itself. By bringing the ball to the creative player from really far back in the pitch, by beating the press with strong, dynamic, violent runs, Thomas Partey can do that. I put out on Twitter today a tweet which has been pretty well received by most, that, in my opinion, Houssem Aouar improves this Arsenal team. But in my opinion, Thomas Partey transforms it. Thomas Partey turns what was a team that failed to compete in so many levels that physically can be outmuscled, and a team that really can't beat the press, into a team that has someone utterly transformative in the midfield. And I would really suggest people that want to look at Aouar as the person to prove a creative sort of turning point in this Arsenal team, is that I would say that you would get that eventually. The problem is that, as Jeremy Smith said so eloquently in his piece, is that Aouar is not a consistent player yet. He has the potential to be a wonderfully fantastic midfielder, and as Jeremy said, arguably one of the best midfielders in the world, possibly. It's always a chance that would or wouldn't happen. But the problem is and the quote I suppose I took hardest from Jeremy was that when Lyon are performing badly, Aouar kind of drops down to the pace of everyone else instead of dragging the other players up to his level. And Arsenal have been full of players like that in their history. Arsenal have been full of players that are brought down and no one has sort of the guile to bring them up again to their level. And do we really need another person like that? A lot of people complain about Mesut Ozil and the way that he can be so dejected and how he can go missing in games. And when we're struggling, he's not the man to take us out of that mess. Now, I'm not saying, far from it, that Houssem Aouar is a Mesut Ozil. I'm not saying that at all. All I am saying is that I would rather prioritise a character in Thomas Partey that does grab the game by the scruff of the neck, that drags his team forwards, that gets them out of dangerous situations, puts them on the front foot. And I'm not sure that Houssem Aouar would do it consistently enough that I'd be willing to risk missing out on a Thomas Partey to get an Aouar that is a much more riskier option. So that's my thoughts. Christopher Fung says, after listening to this, my conclusion is Aouar all day. Tyrone Powell says, Tom is right. He's mature enough and has the necessary intelligence to evaluate the situation and come to the correct conclusion. Come on, man. Vinny Eagle says, financially, both players are not feasible. For me, we should invest in Partey and buy the Hungarian guy. Come on, Vinny. You know his name. Don't be putting me down like that. I mean, Dominic. And I cannot spell his name. Who will be cheaper and has a huge upside. Matt Gray says Partey is ready now and is the best chance of getting us back into the top 4. We don't have the time to give Aouar a full season to embed before we see the best from him, like Pepe, for instance. Wesley says Partey is better and more complete player, but Aouar would make bigger upgrade considering positions they are filling and what players we have on those positions. And I suppose when you look at both players, if Arsenal could, in some miracle, get both of these players, it would be one of the greatest transfer moves of Arsenal's history. And I have absolutely no problem in saying that and being hung out to dry on that, and I will fall on my sword for that statement, but it is in my mind. And I think it was LT Arsenal, our good friend who came on the show, and they put a tweet out saying that Aouar and Partey should be the minimum that Arsenal should expect with a club of our size. But we know in this world that financially Arsenal are not in the best situation right now, especially with COVID, and we never really have been. So this situation's put us under even more stress. But if Arsenal could pull off both, it would be a different level. It would be unbelievably big for the team. Colorado Guna with the super chat. Thank you ever so much, mate. He says, I want both, damn it. Tom, donate some of your new massive salary. New massive salary. Jesus Christ. I doubt that's the case, mate. I doubt that very much. Tom says Partey is more important for the short term and securing top 4. Aouar could be better. Could be a better investment for the long term. I say the former is more vital at the moment. Igor Arnold says things looked good for a minute. Socrates had a suitor. Torreira and Kolasinac both had a couple of offers. Even Mustafi. Now things are just falling apart. We do need to move these players on. We really, really do. Also need to think about consistency, says Matt Gray. I'd rather have Partey consistently putting in a 7 out of 10 performance than Aouar sometimes giving us 5 and sometimes giving us 9. And I think 7 is harsh, Matt. I really do. I think Partey would give you 8s most of the time, easy. The real Janice says great assist, but was definitely a foul. In terms of what was that? In terms of is that was that something to do with Ceballos? Maybe. Tony says prioritise Partey all day long. I believe Ceballos can give what Aouar gives if he is played up front, but nobody in the squad can give what Partey gives. Absolutely nobody. MIL says I've just only got my notification. We went live 15 minutes ago. YouTube, what's going on? Let's get the people in here quicker. Letting them know what's going on with the players. Ugank says, let me give a note. Atletico is under some financial scheme with Spanish government, which means any sale they do, they will only get 25% of the total sale amount. So they might end up loaning. Interesting point. If Arsenal could somehow do a financial deal for Aouar and a loan with an obligation to buy for Partey, that would be incredible. Incredibly astute from Edu. Whether that happens or not, we'll just have to wait to see. But it is a very good point. YY says we already have many potential young players for the future. We need a transformative mid right now, and so Partey is that. Your son is El Neni. Son of your mother's friend is Partey, says Mark. Fantastic. Sim says, I think it's possibly to get both if we want it badly. Tony says, could we get an agreement for Aouar in January and try for Partey now? I don't know how good Arsenal are going to be. We're going to be under even more financial strictness if things carry on without fans being there. The clubs are going to be losing money hand over fist. Juma says, Partey enabling us to change formation is big. Joseph Maseko says, considering the situation with opportunity cost, which opportunity cost would you take? Fix recruitment but reduce revenue in the intermediary term, or increase revenue but weaken the squad? I think you have to find a balance, Joe, between the two. I don't think it's as cut and dry as going one way or the other. I think there are ways to find the balance. But it's not down to me to do that. It is certainly down to the guys upstairs. Justin KS says Partey is a must. If we can't get Aouar on the good deal, then Saka can play more centrally. I mean, I forget about Saka often, that he has the potential to play there. Tinashe says, did you see Partey on the move of his agent earlier today, or am I reading too much into it? Probably. I don't like to buy into the whole, like, oh, this is what he was doing, because someone sends me pictures about that all the time. What else have we got? Yanko says, both we are Arsenal, not a bottom league club. Both. I don't think just buying one means you're suddenly not a top club. I think a lot of people are really kind of out the know about the situation that Arsenal are in. If Arsenal only manage one of these two signings, it doesn't mean they're a small club by any means. Arsenal financially are in a tough situation, and it frustrates me sometimes, the arrogance in a way that we think that we're this amazing, massive, huge club, and we are on the face of it and on paper. But in reality, Arsenal just don't have that financial muscle to compete. And it's all about context. On paper, we're a massive club. But in the context of looking at the other teams around us, we're going to struggle to compete. And financially, we're going to struggle to compete. We can't do what Chelsea are doing right now. We just can't. They've been so much better run. Not only have they had cash injection previously, which has stopped, you have to say, but they've been selling players continuously. They've had a year without transfers, and they've still managed to get Champions League football and maintain that position in the league. So you have to look at that and say, Arsenal just are not that side that they would have been before. Gunnar Seb says, Partey in with Sabas playing further up the pitch would be great. Jasmine says, who needs Partey when we've got Mainsley? Baz says, Partey has informed friends and family that he is leaving for a morning walk. The real Janice says, how are Spurs signing all these players like Skriniar? Your guess is as good as mine, mate. At the end of the day, they have been playing Champions League football, so you have to factor that in. That's only just stopped, but with the stadium move, you have to question things, don't you? But I don't know. Daniel says, how do you know about the finances? You look in the right places, mate. If you have a look at Swiss Ramble a lot, if you have a look at Giant Gooner, and you follow the right guys, and you look into the things are published all the time. So if you do the work and you put the time in, you can find out, Dan, 100%. That's going to wrap things up, people. So make sure that you've clicked that like button for the work that's gone into the video, as it always does. I really appreciate you guys tuning in this afternoon to come in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening and your day. Thank you, as always, to our expert and our TGT ambassadors. I know we've had a couple of people sign up as well that I haven't yet changed onto the thumbnail thing, but I will make sure I do that. Let me just click onto those so I can give people a bit of a shout out. Thank you to Javier, you signed up as an expert member. Delbert Mixon is now an expert member. Ed Easy Isle is now a TGT ambassador. Guna Seb is an expert member. Rohit became an ambassador as well. And Baz became a TGT member the other day as well. So thank you to you guys that have recently signed up. And thank you to, of course, all of the usual expert members. All you guys are amazing. And the TGT ambassadors as well, that now Ed is also a part of. So thank you to every single one of you that is helping to continue and support the channel as things change massively. And if you haven't watched the announcement video I put out a couple of days ago, please make sure you do. But I'm about to sit down for a 3-hour shift to talk about football and write about football, which is just the dream, isn't it? So yeah, I'm going to enjoy my evening, probably order a takeaway or two, and I hope you enjoy yours. 2 takeaways for myself. What am I talking about? Enjoy the rest of your evening, people. Members, you know what to do when we finish the show. You know what emoji to throw into the live chat. So make sure you throw it in. So it's been a pleasure to speak to you, as it always has. And I will see you again very, very soon. And as always, members and the rest of you, up the Arsenal.